He actually was on 97. Was it 97 one, the ticket that he was on?
He was on their Restore to Floor podcast that they have with Stoney. So shout out to those guys.
So he talks about how Joe DeMaris had decided to fire him midway through the 04-05 season, but Rip Hamilton and Chauncey Billups were there to save his job. This is pretty interesting because I had no idea this was going on. I thought the story was that Larry Brown wanted the New York Knicks coaching job, and we kind of already know Larry Brown's track record. He was only in the city for a couple of seasons at a time before he moved on. I had no idea there was animosity because they were winning. They went to 2 straight NBA finals with him winning one, and then he did decide to bolt after they lose to San Antonio, but I had no idea that they wanted him out of the door sooner than that.
I found it kind of interesting, and I think the biggest piece of this podcast that I kind of came away with was Bill Davidson wanted Larry Brown to come back, but not to coach.
Yeah, that was weird.
Which I was like, he kind of went into detail, like that 04 team that beat the Lakers. Like he had mentioned, losing Mehmet Okur. He said Corliss Williamson was probably the most important piece of that team, which I found very interesting, but can't disagree with him there. The guy was just a spark plug off the bench. The fact that they go from winning a championship to not even like a full year later, they want to get rid of him midway through the season. I think that was kind of maybe the downfall of that team, but we didn't really realize it as fans because we went to the NBA Finals the next year against the Spurs. But it just was kind of downhill after that. I think it's just kind of like a poor move from the organization to try to move on from one of the best coaches in NBA history.
Yeah, he is the greatest coach in my lifetime for the Detroit Pistons. I was not around for Chuck Daly. I was born after they won that second championship, but was not around for Chuck Daly. Do you think the Pistons, if they had kept him as the head coach, they could have gone to the NBA Finals the next year, even though they were defeated by the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals?
I'm not sure about that, but I think what he did say is, losing a lot of, bench pieces really did hurt their depth. Maybe if he had more of a say, they could have maybe possibly went back-to-back against the Spurs. Maybe if you decide to keep a Corliss Williamson instead of going after an Antonio McDyess, maybe you find a way to try to keep a Memo Okur. I don't know, but I just feel like they even lost Mike James too, one of their best on-ball defenders. So I think what he said was really interesting of, losing 3 key pieces to that 05 team is kind of the downfall and the demise of that team. And obviously he didn't come back. And I believe the next coach was Flip Saunders, if memory does serve. So obviously Flip was a phenomenal coach. No one's going to touch his playoff win record for the Pistons. They're just not. His playoff wins for the Pistons are just astonishing. But I just think maybe some management was just getting too involved with Larry Brown. And I don't know, like when I read that and I heard that, I was just kind of disappointed that they felt that they had to move on after winning a championship.
I believe once he left, the dynasty ended prematurely because I don't think Ben Wallace heads to Chicago if Larry Brown is still there. Mehmet Okur was gone, which that was unfortunate, but I felt like Larry Brown kind of, handcuffed him a little bit as a player just because he went from shooting like 100 threes the first year with Rick Carlisle to like, I think 45 his second year, which was a huge part of his game. And we all saw him become an all-star in Utah. But the Corliss Williamson news, that was surprising to me because I love Big Nasty, man. He was one of my favorite players to watch in Detroit. I know I say that a lot about guys, but there was just something about being an undersized power forward for him. Like, I just thought it was the most unique thing. He was an awesome player, but yeah, I just think Larry Brown leaving, dynasty ended prematurely. I felt like there was a good window where they could have been adding, like you were saying, like veterans to come off the bench. They could have restored that depth, even though they lost Mike James, Corliss Williamson, and Okur, but they were a team that was contending for it even 3 years after Larry Brown had been fired, after he had left. So they could, if they had kept him, they could have restored that depth, got some other players coming in. I truly do believe that. And I don't know. I think we could have had a dynasty. I don't know if it would have been like, going to the NBA Finals 5 years in a row or anything like that. But They made it to 2 straight finals. Then they made it to, I believe, 3 straight Eastern Conference finals under Flip Saunders. So to sit here and say they couldn't have had at least one more finals appearance in those 3 years under Larry Brown, I think they could have. And it's just a shame, man. Like, we were watching some good basketball at that time, and you could just see that window close really fast when Larry Brown left the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, I think Chuck Brewer said it perfectly, that Flip was an offensive-minded coach, but the team was built around Ben Wallace.
Yep.
I think he said it perfectly. I still think Flip is one of the better Detroit Piston coaches that we do have in history, but I think they kind of tried to get away from what made them great, and they were a great defensive team. And like Larry Brown said, he lost 3 key bench pieces. But like I said, you have to look at it, from a 30,000-foot view. They made 6 Eastern Conference Finals. They beat a star-studded Lakers team in 2004. They gave both of us some of our best memories as kids watching the Detroit Pistons, because as a kid, you think this is normal. It's not. It's excellent style of basketball, and it's been 20 years since the last time the Pistons have won a championship. It's been 15 years since the last time they won a playoff game. So what we had was really special, and I think we should just appreciate that.